Okay, welcome. This is James Possible, and you are at the Wealth Warriors Revolution podcast. I am starting a new series. This is the second episode, and I have WendyY Bailey with me. She's somebody we've known each other for years. So
we have, I think through social media, it's probably been about 10 or 12 years.
Yeah. And Facebook's really I think, the strongest connection we have. So I do have a Wealth Slaying Warriors group. It's the Facebook group. To get to it, all you have to do is go to startslaying.com. It'll take you right to that. It's all about, at the core of the systems that I teach, they're all about wealth. And so they're techniques and systems of wealth creation. And I start that discussion within the Facebook group. So you're welcome to join. It's free for all. Let me change this over here, because what we're going to have here is a conversation, and I think it's a very important conversation. It's timely anyways, especially given what's going on today in Black America. And so I've coined this series, Black Voices, Black Wealth Matters. And, we have Black Lives Matter. But my perspective is all about money and wealth. And truly, within my heart of hearts, I feel that if we didn't have the disparity that we had in wealth, the tensions that we have would be considerably different. Not that they wouldn't exist, but I think they would be considerably different. And so I'm here to support the Black community, and that's my wealth initiative. So, and that's the conversation I want to have with WendyY. And so let's jump in. All right.
Sounds good. It's funny because as I was listening to you, I was thinking, I think the word you're looking for is marginalized.
Ooh, that's a great word,
because
right?
Of systemic racism, Black people, in terms of our wealth, has been marginalized. That means we've been kind of held back from creating the same level of wealth that other races have created.
Oh, I mean, yes, that's such a great word, because, and that would segue so hard if I really jumped into, the whole cycle of everything.
Yeah.
But wealth, without a doubt, the Black community has, or I should say Black communities, because it's not just one Black community in America. We've had multiple Black communities at one point or another start to create wealth, only to have it stripped from them, and not just stripped from them, but tragically, we've seen massacres and those communities completely brought to the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah. And horrific. So marginalized, I think, is being nice.
It is. Yeah, it is. For some reason, I think of, my dad was a country guy. He grew up on a farm, and, dirt roads, and had to catch the bus to go to school.
Right.
And when I say bus to go to school, I'm not talking about the orange bus. I'm talking about the city bus to go to school in the city, because he lived in the country. And one of the things I learned from him when I was moving across country from Atlanta to Houston, Texas, he kept saying that the moving truck was governed down. And I was like, what does he mean by that? I didn't understand it. And years later, I came to understand what he was trying to say was in the U-Haul trucks, or in the moving trucks, it was a U-Haul.
Right.
We'll go ahead and give them some credit here. But they had the trucks metered so that you couldn't go above a certain speed limit.
Yes.
And now today I see marginalization of Black people in that same way. We can't go above a certain speed limit because we're metered, we're governed down, as my dad would call it. And it keeps us from rising. It's a little different now. It's more possible now, but there's still this sense of being governed down.
Well, that's really a wonderful metaphor, Wow. That really says it all. and I listened to P. Diddy the other day because he's up to some things right now. And he was talking about, this marginalization thing. He didn't say it in those words, but he said, even at his level and Oprah's level,
yeah,
there is still this ceiling. And when he said that, I was like, wow, it's just hard to fathom that it's just all the way up there too.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. It's as simple as Tyler Perry is one that just became a billionaire.
Right.
And his whole philosophy was when he was going to Hollywood and they were turning him down and they were not allowing him to sit at the table, his thing was, well, let me just create my own table. And
right.
After years and years and years, that's what he did. He was governed down. He was marginalized, even though he had this megawatt talent. And finally, he just said, I'll create my own. And, he's just been blessed to be able to do it in the way that he has.
Yes.
I love Tyler Perry's story. It doesn't change the fact that when he goes in certain places, he's still profiled.
Yes.
For being a black man.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely. Very, very, very true.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me, when in your life did you first have the thought money, you started to actually consider money, what it was, or first noticed it, I guess?
I think it was when I was just a little older than a toddler. I'm going to say maybe 7 or 8 years old, first, second grade, somewhere in there. And, my mom would send me to my dad to get him to give me money for stuff.
Okay.
And I would say, but we're talking, 100 years ago. But I would say, Dad, can I have a dime? And he would say, what do you want with the whole dime? Like, a dime was like a lot of money.
Right.
So from very young, I understood even a dime had value,
yes.
in terms of money, but it also came with this perspective or perception of what it meant in terms of value. A dime was too much for me. Why was a dime a whole lot of money for me?
Oh, wow. Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
Why couldn't it be $1? Why couldn't
right.
it be, $10 or $25 or, you know what I mean? But just thinking in terms of it having value. And from my perspective, my perception of it was money was something that was of value, but it wasn't necessarily of value to me, for me. Does that make sense?
Wow, you actually had that thought.
I did. And
wow.
It's weird because I don't know that I realized I was having that thought until I got older.
Oh, okay.
And, you know what I mean?
So you're seeing this in hindsight.
Yeah. 7 or 8 years old, no, I didn't get it. But when I got older and I started to process what that really meant, it felt like at 7, I was told that a dime was too much for me to have.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is really powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it went through college too. Like I can think back to my freshman year.
Okay.
And I grew up in a small city south of Atlanta called Macon, Georgia.
Ooh,
and I say a small city. Yeah. Otis Redding is what most people recognize. And Little Richard.
Okay.
They're both from Macon. And that's how people recognize Macon. But I went to school at Georgia State, which is in Atlanta. And I went there. I chose that school because, one, I knew that they didn't have dormitories at the time, which meant I needed to have my own apartment. And that was sort of my sneaky way of getting my own apartment at 17 as a freshman in college.
So you were on a mission.
I was on a mission, totally. And I also went there because they had one of the top 10 business schools in the country. And my major was marketing and business administration.
Really?
While I was at Georgia State. Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that about you.
Yeah. That's not where I graduated now.
Okay.
Like you got excited, but that's not what I graduated with. My degree is in science, in management, because I did a degree completion program 20 years later.
Okay.
When I got to Georgia State, because I had my own apartment, it was in a nice part of Atlanta. It was in a high rise. I lived among people who were, upper middle class, like Pearl Clegg, the playwright, lived in the building. Michael Lomax, who's now the president of UNCF, was married to her at one point, so they would bring their daughter in and out. I lived in a building. This is all in a high rise. I'm 17, 18 years old, so
Sure.
I was living high on the hog,
And you know who they are around you, yes?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
okay.
And it got to a point for me where school wasn't as important for me as making money. So that shifted my perspective a lot, living in that environment, kind of living high on the hog, where I didn't have the responsibility of paying my own bills. My dad sent me to school. And so I would go to school, I would work part-time, and eventually I started working full-time and going to school part-time and then not going to school.
Okay.
So it became about me making money, It became about me having my own income so that I could do things and I could, go places and hobnob with more people. And it was just an interesting time for me. But to me, it was always about trying to create my own understanding of what having money meant for me, because of that 7 or 8 year old girl who was told a dime is a lot of money for you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's interesting how you tie things together, but yeah.
Yeah. So then you're just in the process of working that thought out, even though you're not consciously aware that that's what you're doing.
Right. At that time, you're right.
Got it.
I tell people all the time, years of therapy, years of coaching, working through all of those things that were stuck in my perception. And there's a mentality of lack around that way of thinking. It's you may not have it, so you need to hoard it, or you need to get this now because you might not be able to get it later. Neither of those are healthy perceptions to have,
Nope.
But that is how my life has been. And I'm going to be honest and say the last 6 years, I spent unraveling that and sort of trying to rewire my brain in a different way.
Nice.
It's been challenging, but therapy, coaching, support system.
Oh, all of the above,
people,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I'm no different. I've gone through all the same things as far as support too. With
you do what you got to do.
Yeah, I'm 15 years into working with people, and so I've divorced my family, but and that's definitely broken a lot of cycles for me. But yeah, you do what you got to do, like you said.
You do what you got to do.
So in your family, so the dime, you tell the story of the dime. Was money talked about other than that, or?
There were some challenging situations that came up around money.
Okay.
But it wasn't something that was necessarily discussed.
Okay.
I remember my mom not working outside the home until I went to first grade, maybe.
Okay.
Something like that.
Sure.
And because she worked outside the home at that point, there was conflict between she and my father about what contribution she was making with her income to the household. And, he treated her and her income as though it wasn't enough, like it wasn't good enough to be considered. And he talked down at my mom.
And you're very aware of this, right?
Oh, yeah, totally. I'm the youngest of 4, so I heard all of it.
Wow, yes.
Yeah, even after my sibling that's next to me went away to college, she's 5.5 years older, I heard all of it.
Right.
Even into me being a sophomore, senior in high school, I was still hearing that kind of conflict between my mom and my dad. And there were some ugly situations that came up around this idea of contribution to the household and around what was his versus what was hers,
Yes.
or the family, and what contribution she was making versus what he was making. And, I remember being away in college, and my mom decided she was going to get her own car. And when I say get her own car, he bought a car, she drove the car, but he treated it like it was his, to the point that she didn't feel like it belonged to her. Right. So she went and got her own car. I mean, picked it out. It was actually my cousin who lived across the street. It was his old car. She liked it. She saw it. And she, called him and said, I want it. She went to her credit union, bought it, and she had her own car. It was her car. It was in her name. She was the one making the payments. My dad couldn't say anything about it, but he still did.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
So she did that. How old were you when that happened?
I was in college. It was after I had gone away. So
okay.
I'm going to say I might have been 18, 19 years old, somewhere around here. Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty big move.
Yeah, it was a big move. It was a big move. And everything that I saw my mom do after that was sort of like she jumped another hurdle, another obstacle. And it's interesting, I'm telling you this about my dad. My dad and I shared a birthday. I was born on his birthday.
Really?
Yeah. So some of the things that haunted me in a way, seeing the conflict between he and my mom growing up, and they always were together. They were not divorced or separated or anything like that.
Okay.
I saw them go through that period where my mom considered it and then changed her mind. I often wonder what life would have been like if that had happened. But when I look at the person that he was, he's been gone now 14 years.
Okay.
14 years he's been gone, 2006. And I still remember a lot of things that happened in my childhood that were related to possessions and money and worth and contribution and all of that ties directly to how I perceive money today, how I perceive money. I know it affects my siblings differently, but I know it's made a difference for me in terms of wanting to make sure I have my own stuff.
Sure.
And I want to be independent, and I want to not have to worry about somebody taking care of me. To, actually shifting that and going, I'm tired. I want somebody to take care of me. So I've even gone there as well. And then I kind of found a happy medium, I think, today, where I'm like, it would be nice if I had someone to share the load with. But, if that happens, great. If not, it just wasn't meant to be, and I'm okay with that.
Well, that's more of a compliment, right?
About?
Well, having somebody to complement your life, not really.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, because when I tell you I went through a stage where I was like, I don't want to do any of it anymore. I want somebody that's just going to take care of everything. I don't have to worry about it. I don't want to pay a mortgage again. I don't want to have to worry about putting gas in the car. All of those manly responsibility kinds of things that I had taken on when I was in corporate America. Before I started my business, I was like, I had a mortgage, I had a car payment, I had an insurance payment, I had a child care note, I was a single mom. I had all of these responsibilities, financial responsibilities, and I just wanted to get out from under them.
Right.
Yeah.
I get that.
But times change.
Sure.
And today, I don't have a mortgage today, but I'm totally okay with my responsibilities. Like, I understand that they're part of my independence as well. And I've kind of turned the corner on that one.
That's a great point. That's a great point, because it's safe for me to say that I went through a similar journey as well. To, and so I think I can relate to that. Did you did your father pass before your mother?
My mom's still living. She's 89 years old.
So,
and she really is very, how do I want to say this? That pattern that she started when she bought the cousin, the neighbor's car, and her having her own stuff, I see it in a lot of the things that she says and does today. She's real particular about her stuff. You know what I mean? It's important to her. Her stuff is important to her.
Right.
And I think it's because of what she went through with my dad, you know? And again, I saw a lot of the conflict, and I saw a lot of what I thought was unfair treatment on both ends, not just him, but, you know, both of them in terms of how they interacted with each other. And what I've come to understand is that self-sufficiency around her stuff is tied to how she sees her self-worth these days, and how she's able to sort of account for her contribution. Contribution is not the word I want to use, but it's sort of this reckoning that, wow, I was here. Legacy is the word I'm looking for.
Okay.
Legacy. My legacy is tied to stuff. You know, I've built a home. I've, you know, had this car. I have these things that I can leave my family. So there's a legacy for her that's tied to stuff.
Oh, I see that. Yeah. Did you ever have conversations with her after your father passed about money, or?
Yeah. And if you can imagine, you know, some of the things I remember, she filled in some of the gaps of things that I didn't remember. And, you know, I just, let me say this in my dad's defense. Before he passed away, I came to understand why he was the way that he was. I remember, let's see, I started my business in 2002, and it was either that summer or the following summer, I went to visit my father's sister, my aunt, who had moved away from where they grew up in the country and moved back after she and her husband retired. They built the same house that they had built in Warner Robins, which is where they lived. And so my son and I went to visit her, and we stayed for about a week, and she told the most fabulous stories of how my dad grew up and, you know, what it was like for them. I want to say it was like 10 or 11 of them, something like that. And they're all gone now. But, you know, listening to her tell stories gave me a new insight into my dad, and why he was the way that he was. He was the youngest of them all. And there were certain ones that catered to him, his older siblings that kind of catered to him, and their children catered to my dad as well. And I want to say it's been in the last 5 years or so that I've talked to nephews of my dad. So they're my cousins, but they've been like, yeah, you know, Uncle Charlie was always, you know, a big money guy. He would come into town and he would peel off a 50 for me, or he would give me, and I was like, he did? Like, I was stunned. Like, that wasn't the guy that I grew up knowing. You know, he was the one who said, what you gonna do with a whole dime? So, you know, he wasn't peeling any 50s. But I also came to understand, like I said, that's been in the last maybe 5 or so years that I've been aware of that information. And then he was also the one who always felt like he needed to be driving a Cadillac. So he had Cadillacs for days and for years. I mean, before I was born, he had a Cadillac. And every car after that would be a Cadillac. So, you know, he was the Cadillac driving, uncle peeling $50 off his wad kind of guy to them, but I never saw that guy.
Wow.
Never saw that guy.
That's
ever.
That's
I mean,
interesting.
ever saw that guy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yes, it's a lot.
Yeah.
Looking back and knowing that that's how he was and kind of how he presented himself to them, in his own way, his legacy was tied to stuff as well, in a different way than my mom's, but still it was about stuff.
You know, that's such a great word. Yeah, just it's tied to stuff, right? Yeah. So
Cadillac. I mean, he would wash the cars in the rain because they had dirt on them.
Yep. That's
okay,
so
Daddy, you know it's raining outside, right? Yeah, but you know, I don't want that dirt to ruin the paint on the car. So let me wash the car. Okay, Dad.
That's That is, that's so great. So among your peers,
Mhm.
you know, at any point in time, is there a time that strikes you